First of all, we welcome Lord Mayor Oisin Quinn.
Thank you very much, Angus. Good evening, everyone. It's a great honour to be here. I'm delighted to see this event happen. It's a great collaboration between the city and the US Embassy to commemorate this amazing speech made on this day 50 years ago by Martin Luther King. And one of the things that we were really keen to do was to ensure we didn't just look back at the speech, but we tried to root it in Dublin today, and also to put on a very entertaining evening. So Martin Luther King's speech, "I Have a Dream," is one of the most remarkable and noted civil rights speeches of the 20th century. And this evening, Dublin is delighted to join the countless cities around the world that are going to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the speech with this event that will see the voices of civic society and members of the public in Dublin today, and that actually includes all of you out there, because we're going to have an audience participation element, reenact that speech. Now, this week is also an important anniversary in that this week we're also commemorating the centenary of the 1913 lockout. And I think similarly, as we look back on the events 100 years ago in Dublin, which was a very different Dublin, but one where inequality and lack of justice were being fought, it focuses us today on the battles that are still there. And there are echoes made in Martin Luther King's speech 50 years ago about the fight for social justice and equality of black people in the United States of America. Now, today in 2013, while so much has been achieved, there's still a strong need for the work of civil rights to continue, not just to prevent racism, although there are worrying signs that that is somewhat on the increase, and not just to prevent discrimination, although there are also worrying signs that that is still with us, but to promote equality and justice in our society. And, in my opinion, to commit to the building of Dublin as a city which is open, welcoming, diverse, and one that embraces diversity and advantage and integration. And that is important for all of us because we want to have the strongest city we can have, and also because it is the right thing to do. One of the objectives I have as Lord Mayor is to promote leadership in Dublin's non-Irish. We know from our census in 2011 that more than 200,000 people in the city region, 1 in 5, while they're Dubliners, consider themselves non-Irish. And yet, if you look at the leadership faces in the city, whether it's in politics or in senior positions in the Guards or in government, a lot of the faces look the same. And we have a challenge there, and many other European cities have not succeeded in addressing that challenge, and we can't ignore it. And it's not enough just for things to be orderly or for there to be apparent integration. That is not enough. We have to strive for both justice and equality. So the speakers chosen tonight represent our whole community and those significant organisations and bodies which are so involved in the work for civil and human rights in Dublin and Ireland. And it's a great pleasure for me to say that I believe Dublin City is committed to the dream identified by Martin Luther King in his iconic speech, and for working every day while we are committed to doing that work to ensure that we can take the steps needed to achieve that dream. So I want to just thank you all for coming, to thank a few people who were involved in this night. This was put together to commemorate and to add more than just putting on the speech, as you know, and fantastic work has been done by all of the team in the US Embassy and on the Dublin City Council side, and I particularly want to acknowledge the work of Declan Hayden and Ray Yates and all of their team, Melissa Nolan as well, the fantastic work that was done to put this night together. And it's fantastic to listen to the Aoife Doyle band and the music, and there's going to be more music coming, and to know that the recording that we did for that, showing the Liffey in the background earlier, is going to be broadcast as part of the Times Square celebration in New York. So it's absolutely fantastic that Dublin steps forward and is going to play a great role in this 50th celebration. So thank you all for coming, and enjoy the night.
9, 10, 11, 12.
Always better to do it there than to try and worry about it later on. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please welcome, representing the US Embassy, we're delighted to have the Chargé d'Affaires here, Mr. John Hennessey-Niland.
Thank you, Angus. Lord Mayor, good evening, Dublin. On a warm summer day 50 years ago, exactly today, an African-American preacher with no official title or rank gave an impassioned voice to the demands of the U.S. civil rights movement, equal rights and justice for all. From the steps of the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. inspired a movement that would push America toward a more perfect union. His example stirred men and women of all backgrounds to become foot soldiers for justice, and his leadership gave them the courage to refuse the limitations of the day and fight against the injustices that they had, and to give them the hope for the future. Because of that vision, because of Dr. King's moral imagination and his indignation, barricades began to fall and bigotry began to fade, and new doors of opportunity were opened for an entire generation. In President Obama's words, it was the progress set in train by Dr. King for the people of the United States that led to his election 5 decades later. In 1968, Martin Luther King was gunned down by a brutal assassin, his life cut short at the age of 39. But those 39 too short years had changed America and the world forever. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 guaranteed all Americans equal access. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 made certain from that point on all Americans would get the right to vote. But most important, it wasn't just a change of law, there was a change of heart and of mind. The conscience of America had been touched, and across the land, people had begun to treat each other not as blacks or whites, but as neighbors, as Americans. And as a result of Dr. King's struggle, society today is more diverse, more inclusive, more compassionate, and more just than ever before. But this is an enduring struggle, and we still have much work to do in the United States to ensure that everyone, regardless of race, religion, gender, ethnic background, or sexual preference, have the same rights and respect. And it is right that tonight we are here to honor that march and to lift up Dr. King's "I Have a Dream" speech. For without that defining moment, without his words, we may never have had the courage to come as far as we have. And it is worth remembering that progress did not come from words alone. Progress was hard, and it remains hard. But both by his word and by his example, Dr. King reminded us, and I think he continues to remind us, that change does not roll in on the wheels of inevitability. It takes work. And I want to thank a number of people here tonight for their work. I want to thank the Dublin City Council. I want to thank their Office of Integration. I want to thank the Temple Bar organization that put on tonight's event, because truly, in this beautiful place, in this beautiful city, in this beautiful country, I think Dr. King continues to inspire all of us to believe that the future is one of diverse, not divergent communities, and within which everyone enjoys equal opportunity, where children can grow up without the threat of violence, and where separation and isolation are rejected. And as the face of Ireland changes and becomes more global and more varied, it is good to take the time, as we do tonight, to celebrate, truly to celebrate how vibrant, how attractive, how powerful his vision is of the communities we can build when diversity is embraced. And I do want to thank the Lord Mayor for all of his initiatives on integration in this great city of Dublin, and the Temple Bar Cultural Trust for partnering with us tonight. And I want to thank everyone, all of you, for coming today to be part of this global event. As the Lord Mayor mentioned, Dublin is joining 17 cities across the globe as part of Dream at 50, which is a worldwide celebration of Dr. King's famous speech. 17 locations, including New York, London, Paris, Johannesburg, Shanghai, Singapore, Amman, Beirut, and Mumbai, will be streaming events and clips to New York iconic Times Square. But truly, this is simply a demonstration, a small one perhaps, of just how large and how important Dr. King's vision remains. It's as relevant and universal today as when he delivered his I Have a Dream speech 50 years ago. And in the words of President Obama, with our eyes on the horizon and our faith squarely placed in one another, let us keep striving, let us keep struggling, let us keep climbing toward that promised land of a nation and a world that is more fair, more just, and more equal. Thank you so much.